Welcome to this explainer on the Great Untangling, reclaiming your authentic identity. We are going to skip the usual agenda today because, honestly, we just need to jump straight into this. We're going on a profound philosophical journey today, the journey of untangling ourselves from that incredibly heavy, suffocating weight of external expectations. So, if you have ever felt like you're living a life that was designed by somebody else, you are in exactly the right place. Imagine you and I are just a couple of philosophers sitting on a park bench, watching the pigeons of conformity and expectation peck at the breadcrumbs of identity. It's a pretty striking metaphor, isn't it? I want you to ask yourself right now, do you ever feel like you're spending all your precious energy watering someone else's garden while your own is just slowly turning to dust? Because, well, that's exactly what happens when we let our own identity starve just to feed the expectations of everyone around us. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to look at the cost of borrowed ideals and the real psychological toll of living a knockoff blueprint. When you're basically living your life based on someone else's blueprint, the immediate cost is this profound loss of self. You kind of become a blurry photocopy of an ideal you can't even fully access. And the daily action of performing, pretending day in and day out, it inevitably leads straight to anxiety and burnout. It is a soul-taxing, full-time job. But actually, the most dangerous action of all, carrying someone else's dream. At first, it might feel like admiration, sure, but over time it extracts a really heavy toll, and that toll is resentment. It builds this quiet, simmering rage that you might not even be able to pinpoint. So that brings us to the illusion of expectations, or as I like to think of it, chasing holograms out in the jungle. The true absurdity of all these borrowed ideals is that they aren't even real to begin with. We absolutely exhaust ourselves trying to meet standards that are literally nothing more than shape-shifting illusions. And this breaks down in a few pretty harsh ways. First off, you have absolutely no access to the original software. The ideal you're chasing exists only in someone else's head. It's completely tied to their unique context and their insecurities, which, by the way, you do not share. Second, you are chasing a hologram based on secondhand hints. And third, these are shape-shifting standards. The person you are trying so hard to impress could just change their mind tomorrow, leaving you totally stranded trying to fulfill yesterday's expectation in today's storm. Ultimately, you're just living in echoes. It is like trying to paint a masterpiece with someone else's brush on a canvas you can't even see. Now, what's really interesting here, and honestly where it gets truly meta-ironic, is this massive realization. The person whose ideals you are copying is likely just copying someone else's ideals. Seriously, think about that. You are twisting yourself into knots to mimic a standard that the other person is probably faking too. You're copying someone who's copying someone else, all caught up in this endless loop of inauthenticity. Which perfectly sums up this thought. Everyone's chasing ghosts in the Museum of Human Approval. A museum of human approval. We're all just wandering these halls, looking at exhibits of what we think success or happiness looks like. But none of it is actually alive. It's just a hollow pursuit. All right, it is time to spy your true ideals. Go ahead and grab your flashlight and your philosophical machete. We need to hack our way into the jungle of your mind for a diagnostic checkup. We have to figure out which vines actually belong to you and which ones are just tangled around your ankles from someone else's overgrown life vision. Let's start with a quick emotional check-in. That dreadful should-I mindset is fueled entirely by authority and guilt. Parents, culture, or maybe some influencer with a ring light telling you to wake up at 5 a.m. and bench press a planet. Contrast that with the want-to mindset. That one is fueled by your own personal spark. When you visualize an ideal, ask yourself, does it make you feel excited or kind of dead inside? If your emotional compass consistently points toward dread or guilt, it is borrowed. If it gives you a spark, even if it's terrifying, it's yours. The next tool in our diagnostic kit is the origin story. Where did this ideal actually come from? Try to trace it back. Why do you think you have to be an entrepreneur? Or why do you need to be married by 30? Whose voice do you actually hear in your head when you think about success or failure? The absolutely crucial point here is that if that voice isn't yours, you have every right to just return to sender. You don't have to keep a package you never ordered. And hey, consider your natural rhythms too. Forcing yourself to be a giraffe when your true nature is clearly a dolphin is just a recipe for utter misery. An ideal should challenge you, for sure, but it should not force you to reject your fundamental identity. Ask yourself right now, does your current path honor who you are, or does it force you to constantly reject your natural self? Finally, we have the consistency check. Do you uphold this ideal when nobody is watching, or is it just to impress Aunt Linda at the holiday dinner? If an ideal, a habit, or a goal magically vanishes the second you are entirely alone in a room, it is definitively borrowed. It lives on your resume, not in your soul. But if you still care about it in the silence when no one is looking, yeah, it's probably yours. Let's move to how this all builds together, how to untangle yourself and start reclaiming your own ideals. Here is your actionable roadmap for breaking free. First, you're going to write a definitive no thanks list to just formally reject those borrowed life goals. Next, sketch out your true north to find your personal myth and your internal compass. And finally, start sweeping the dust. Prune those borrowed actions one step at a time. Because you can't just wish away borrowed ideals, right? You have to actively unchoose them and replace them with your own. Finding that true north requires mapping your personal myth. I highly recommend you pause this explainer for a second and just finish these 5 foundational sentences. I feel most myself when. My ideal day includes the people I admire most value. I want my life to reflect, and crucially, I am willing to struggle for. What are you actually willing to suffer for? Because whatever that is, it reveals what you truly care about. This sketch right here becomes your new internal compass. And then, you have to do the actual work. Start sweeping the dust. Prune the borrowed items from your life, just one small action at a time. Say it no more often. And honestly, most importantly, let silence be enough when someone challenges your choices. You do not need to justify your existence to anyone. Live your weird, honest truth, even if no one claps for you. I want you to think of your life like an improv show. There's no script, there are no reruns, and there is no director yelling, cut. It's just you, on stage, mic in hand, ad-libbing your way through all the beauty and the mess. Your job isn't to recite lines someone else wrote for a play that you never even auditioned for. Your only job in this life is to show up as you. Which brings us to one final provocative thought. If the director yelled cut right now, whose script would you be holding? I think it's time to drop their pages and start writing your own.